Thank you very much, John, for the introduction. I'm going to try sharing my screen, which we have practiced. And I think that all looks good. Cool. All looks good. Fantastic. So yeah, thank you very much, John, for the introduction, and thank you to everyone for joining. As John mentioned, I'm a partnerships lead at what3words. For those of you who aren't familiar with our company, we're a small company based in London. There's about 100 of us working across the business. Our HQ is in West London, as John mentioned. We do have a couple of offices outside of London, the largest of which is in Mongolia. The fundamental ambition behind what we're trying to do is we're trying to build a new standard in the way that people communicate a location. So we've designed a system to help people communicate precise locations, whatever it is they might be doing and wherever it is they are, whether they're trying to book a taxi to a precise spot, whether they're trying to get a delivery to a rural location, even whether they're trying to get an ambulance to find them in an emergency. And really, very simply, the reason that we exist, as John alluded to, is the fact that street addresses weren't necessarily designed for the digital age. And what that means is that they don't always do the job that we want them to do in terms of communicating a precise location. One of perhaps the most obvious issues with street addresses is the fact that many places in the world don't actually have them. So you may have gone camping in a remote and beautiful spot. You may want to tell your friends or family where you've camped, but actually it's very difficult to do that when you're in a place like this because there aren't any street addresses. Similarly, you may have had a breakdown in a rural location on a long stretch of road, and trying to tell a breakdown recovery driver exactly where you are can be really, really difficult. You may even be in a city or in a park and be at a music festival where you're surrounded by tens of thousands of people in a field, and even just trying to tell your friends where to meet you can again be quite tricky. But even when we do have street addresses, these don't always do the job that we want them to do. And to take an example from the UK, in rural locations, postcodes and street addresses will often cover very, very large areas. And what you'll find is situations like this, where the pin for College Farm actually drops in a location about 500 meters away up the road. And what tends to happen is, you may be at College Farm trying to get something delivered to you. The delivery driver can't find where you are, and you end up spending 5 or 10 minutes on the phone with that person trying to give them directions. Even in cities, though, even in urban areas, this can still be a problem, particularly with places like football stadiums or shopping malls or large venues. Again, typically these places have one street address, but multiple different entrances and exits, accessible entrances, delivery entrances, customer service entrances. And describing any of these locations quickly and easily can again be really tricky. What you'll also find is that street addresses weren't designed for the digital age, in the sense that lots of streets in small areas in cities will often have exactly the same name. So Church Road is a very good example of a common road name in the UK. In Liverpool, there are about 5 church roads. In London, there are about 14. Apparently, Mexico City has about 632 Juarez streets, if you ever find yourself there. And this may not necessarily be a problem if you know the area well. But if you're new to the area and you just say to someone, I'm on Church Road, it can be really difficult for that person to know which one you mean. Very easy for them to set off to the wrong location. Another potential issue with street addresses is that it can take a very long time for digital mapping providers like Google Maps or Apple Maps to update their address database. So oftentimes people will move into new build houses and have to wait between 3 and 6 months for their address to actually exist in Google Maps. This is frustrating, obviously, if you can't get a pizza delivered to your front door, but becomes slightly more critical if there's an emergency and you have a physical street address, but no way of telling people where you live. I should say at this point that there are other systems that exist to help solve the problem with poor addressing. One very good solution is sharing a pin on a digital map. This is something that I use if I'm trying to meet friends in a park, and it's a great solution, but it does have limitations. And the main limitation is the fact that it's not always possible to share a digital pin. If you're trying to remember a location or write a location down, if you're trying to communicate that location over the phone or verbally, again, just having a pin on a map isn't necessarily always that useful. Similarly, sharing a pin from one device, say my phone, into my car's sat nav, again, isn't always possible. Another solution, which I'm sure everyone here in the audience will be very familiar with, is a GPS coordinate. And this, again, is a fantastic solution. It's totally accurate, and it covers every single part of the world. The only issue with this is the fact that it's not the most human-friendly way to describe a location, particularly for someone like me who's dreadful with numbers at the best of times. Trying to remember and communicate 16 of them without making any kind of mistake can be really, really daunting. Also, again, like with other solutions like OS grid references, these systems are hierarchical. They move in a sequential manner with similar coordinates, similar sequences being very, very close together. So get one of these numbers wrong or two of these numbers wrong, and you'll end up in a very similar location, but not the exact spot that you need to be in. So again, very difficult to spot mistakes and very easy to end up setting off to the wrong location. So really, this is where what3words fits in. We wanted to make a system that was as human-friendly as a street address, or perhaps more human-friendly, but was as accurate as a coordinate. And so what we decided to do as a company is essentially divide the world into a grid of 3 meter by 3 meter squares. And using a list of dictionary words, we assigned every single square its own unique 3-word address. And so what this means is if you want to meet a friend at a specific entrance to a stadium, if you need to tell a vet exactly where a cow is in the middle of a field, or if you just want to meet friends in a crowded park, you can do so by just remembering and communicating 3 dictionary words. I'm not sure if people have had a chance to check this out at all, but if not, please do. We've got a free app and a free desktop map. And what these do is they allow you to discover a what3words address. You can search for a what3words address. You can share, navigate, and save a what3words address. And the app works totally offline. So you don't need 3G or 4G or an internet connection in order to discover your 3-word address or search for a location. I think it's also important to say at this point that we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. Fundamentally, all our technology is doing is converting a 16-digit GPS coordinate into 3 dictionary words. So for people that aren't comfortable communicating using numbers or long sequences of numbers, they can essentially do so with just 3 words. What we also are aware of is that it's still, although 3 words we hope are easier than 16 numbers, there is still the chance that people may mishear or mistype a 3-word address. And so what we decided to do was build in a feature called Autosuggest. And what Autosuggest does is essentially it takes the current location of a user's device and will suggest similar alternatives in a that are closer, so that if someone does make a mistake when they're typing in a 3-word address, it's immediately obvious that they've made a mistake and they can select the correct alternative. I should say as well, what we've also done within the system is try to shuffle similar sounding 3-word addresses as far apart as possible So again, it helps users spot mistakes and correct those. And we want this to be a global system, something that everybody can use no matter where they are. So we started in English. It's now available in 46 other languages. Whether you speak Dutch or Swahili, Spanish, Japanese, or Arabic, you can use the technology in your own native language. So that's really the concept. As I mentioned at the start, what3words is used in lots of different ways. Fundamentally, it's just like an address. So any company or individual that uses an address in their day-to-day lives could also use a what3words address. So to give you some examples, we do a lot of work in the world of travel and tourism, helping companies like Premier Inn tell customers exactly which entrance they need to go to, particularly when there are about 4 or 5 Premier Inns in the same city, which is something that I've been a victim of in the past. We also do a lot of work with companies like Lonely Planet. We've seen what3words crop up in guidebooks, on maps for tourists, helping people find the best spots around a new country, particularly when they don't speak the language and aren't familiar with the system of addressing in that country. We've also started to see, very excitingly, what3words addresses cropping up on signs, everything from emergency buoyancy aids to water treatment plants to signs around London, even beach signs just outside of Sydney in Australia. We also do a lot of work within the world of ride hailing and taxi apps. So late last year, Addison Lee integrated our technology into their app, so that customers can book a taxi to or from a what3words address. We also put a lot of focus as a company into the world of automotive. We work with the likes of Mercedes-Benz. So if you're lucky enough to have a Mercedes-Benz, you can speak 3 words to your car. It will recognize that as a location and set a route to that exact spot. We also do work with other car companies, the likes of Ford, Tata, Mitsubishi, and others. And again, more recently, we've particularly over the last 12 months, as more and more people turn to e-commerce, we've started to do a lot of work with e-commerce and logistics providers, both around the UK and globally. So Hermes, one of the more recent examples of a logistics company that can now deliver to a what3words address. If you have the Hermes app, you can enter a what3words address for your home address as well. We also do work with emergency services. So this really kicked off in the UK about 2 years ago. It wasn't something that we necessarily anticipated as a company. We assumed that technologies existed to help the emergency services locate callers easily and quickly, without having to have verbal communication. And whilst these technologies do exist, they're not quite at a stage where they're as widespread as many people would hope. And so what3words basically is just an additional tool to help the emergency services communicate locations and to help members of the public communicate with the emergency services. And whilst it's not necessarily something that we anticipated, it's been incredibly humbling to see so many situations in which a what3words address has helped the emergency services locate people quicker, scenarios where the police forces and ambulance services and fire services all communicating using a what3words address to coordinate response to incidents, which has been obviously incredibly thrilling and incredibly humbling, as I was saying, for the company. And then more recently, and I suppose looking towards the future, what we've seen a lot, and I suppose again more recently, is what3words addresses being introduced for autonomous and drone delivery. And last year, one of my colleagues, Phoebe, worked on a fantastic project with a company called Drone Prep and Skyports as well. And Drone Prep, we're very thrilled to be part of this project, which was essentially a project in collaboration with Royal Mail, the first of its kind in delivering mail via drone. And Skyport's drone prep, Royal Mail, and what3words successfully managed to deliver a piece of mail to a remote island on the west coast of Scotland, to what we hope was a very happy and satisfied customer, who was able to use the what3words address to tell them exactly where she wanted the drone to land. So that's really what3words in a nutshell. I hope that's given people a bit of context around what we're trying to do and the kinds of businesses and organizations that we work with. And yeah, more than happy to answer any questions if there are any. But thank you very much.